Welcome back to The Explainer. We are diving straight into day 84 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Today, we're breaking down a really complex web of global events by taking a geographic tour. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this because honestly, when you look at a conflict of this sheer scale, the best way to truly grasp it is to literally map it out. We're going to look at the economic choke points, the quiet diplomatic backchannels, the intense domestic political battles, and the profound cultural factors at play, all by tracing them directly across the globe. So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with whispers of diplomatic progress, move right into the Strait of Hormuz standoff, examine the crisis in Lebanon, cross over to U.S. politics and military might, and finally, we'll look at the Hajj pilgrimage factor. All right, Section 1, Whispers of Diplomatic Progress, specifically focusing on the talks in Tehran. Our geographic tour kicks off where diplomatic gears are slowly, painstakingly turning. And what's fascinating here is that this mediation is being driven heavily by Pakistan, acting as a crucial primary interlocutor, working closely with both sides. Now, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio highlighted this incredibly cautious vibe recently in Sweden. He validated that, yes, there is some progress, largely driven by meetings between the Pakistani Interior Minister, the Iranian Foreign Minister, and Pakistan's Army Chief. But Secretary Rubio was really quick to emphasize the core pillars required for any real deal. Basically, Iran can never have a nuclear weapon, the highly enriched uranium has to be dealt with, and of course, the straits must be reopened. The U.S. is keeping option B, meaning direct military force, firmly on the table if these talks fall through. And you can literally feel the tension this creates in the room. Right now, a top UAE presidential advisor sees a true 50-50 coin toss chance for a political agreement. But on the flip side, historians and analysts point to Iran's habitual tendency to take the absolute hardest line possible. They tend to over-negotiate and overestimate the cards in their hand. This historical habit has actually caused them to miss crucial chances in the past, so a lot of experts are holding their breath right now rather than holding out immediate hope for breakthrough. Okay, moving into Section 2, the Strait of Hormuz standoff, a true global choke point. Let's head south from Tehran to the Strait of Hormuz, which is without a doubt the absolute bottleneck of the entire global economy right now. 1,600. Just take a second to picture that massive scale. That represents the number of colossal cargo ships currently sitting idle, just waiting to exit the Persian Gulf. The UK's foreign secretary recently called it disgraceful, pointing out that this blockade is essentially holding the global economy hostage. We are talking about severe, immediate impacts on international shipping, which translates directly, and I mean directly, to global fuel and fertilizer prices spiking. The world economy is literally on pause while these ships are stuck. But Iran's toll arrangements are wildly complicated. They've formed this newly created Persian Gulf Strait Authority to demand tolls across territorial waters that actually put them on a direct collision course with Oman and the UAE. And here's the kicker. They've carved out strategic exceptions. Ships from China, Pakistan, India, Japan, and vessels serving Iran directly get a pass. This piecemeal, pick-and-choose approach puts the fundamental principle of freedom of navigation, which basically underpins all of globalization, at severe risk. Pivoting sharply to Section 3, the crisis in Lebanon and the civilian impact. We are heading over to the Mediterranean now to look at a deeply concerning, incredibly active combat zone. Looking at the reality on the ground, neutrally, we are seeing two completely conflicting narratives regarding the daily airstrikes in southern Lebanon. On one hand, the Lebanese health ministry is forcefully accusing Israel of defying international humanitarian law by deliberately attacking civilian paramedics. Conversely, the Israel Defense Forces explicitly state they are strictly targeting Iranian-backed Hezbollah facilities. They accuse Hezbollah of actively using ambulances to transfer fighters. So you have two entirely different explanations for the exact same combat zones. Tragically, regardless of those narratives, this number represents the severe human cost on the ground. Over 100 paramedics have been killed since March 2nd. This includes recent casualties in an airstrike on a village near Tyre and an overnight raid in the town of Hanaway. It really emphasizes the devastating day-to-day reality of this active war zone. And the wider civilian impact is just devastating. Despite some temporary diplomatic band-aids, like the recent 45-day ceasefire extension, the south of Lebanon remains a highly volatile war zone. Villages and homes are being demolished, forcing over 1 million Lebanese citizens to flee. The government has had to hastily set up new areas with tents and hygiene facilities in Beirut just to house them. It's a stark visual reminder that there is zero immediate return in sight, and confidence in a lasting political solution remains incredibly low among the displaced. Let's cross the Atlantic for Section 4, U.S. politics and military might. where option B meets Congress. We are looking at Washington, D.C., where the actual application of military force and intense domestic politics are actively colliding. On the military side, the Pentagon's option B is already fully engaged. U.S. naval assets are aggressively enforcing a blockade on Iranian ports. The latest update from U.S. Central Command shows 97 vessels turned around and 4 physically disabled at sea during this enforcement. The military capability to resume major countrywide combat operations is sitting right there, essentially just waiting on orders. But back in Washington, authorizing any further action is trapped in a domestic gridlock. The war is creating massive partisan friction. Democrats introduced legislation attempting to force President Trump to withdraw, with figures like Representative Gregory Meeks labeling it a war of choice. Meanwhile, House Republicans struggled to find the numbers necessary to dismiss the legislation, which resulted in them delaying the Iran War Powers vote entirely. Because of this high-stakes tug-of-war, this critical legislative vote is completely stalled until at least June. Both sides are maneuvering for political leverage, right in the middle of a global crisis. Finally, Section 5, the Hajj pilgrimage factor. We travel back to the Middle East, specifically Saudi Arabia, to explore a really surprising factor that might actually be hitting the pause button on broader regional strikes. $12 billion. That massive figure is the annual economic benefit Saudi Arabia gains from religious tourism. After oil, it's the biggest source of income for the country, generated mostly during a very short, intense period. However, this conflict recently led to a huge reduction in air traffic in the Gulf, which is a major long-haul hub, resulting in thousands of canceled flights. The economic threat to this massive revenue stream is incredibly real right now. And this key Islamic right is deeply politicized. Just look at how this builds over time. For almost a decade prior to 2023, hopeful Iranian pilgrims were completely denied access to Saudi Arabia. Then, a landmark 2023 deal brokered by China restored diplomatic relations. Now look at the present day. Despite this current war, and despite recent Iranian strikes directly hitting Saudi soil, Iranian citizens are still making their way to the holy site in Mecca for the Hajj. This fragile diplomatic bridge has miraculously held open the doors for the world's largest religious gathering. Which brings us to a vital revelation. Economic and cultural pressures from Gulf nations uniquely influenced the timeline of U.S. military retaliation. Regional reporting suggests that Gulf leaders, especially from Saudi Arabia, actively encouraged President Trump to hold off on new military strikes, specifically to preserve the atmosphere of the Hajj season across the Muslim world. It is a fascinating example of how profound cultural events and raw economics can literally pause a war machine. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final critical thought. We've seen how 1,600 ships can bottleneck the global economy, and how a religious gathering can stall military strikes. But will the immense cultural and economic pressure of the Hajj pilgrimage actually force a lasting political solution at the negotiating table? Or, once the pilgrimage ends and the tents are packed away, is this just a temporary, fragile pause in an inevitably growing global conflict? It's absolutely something to think about as we watch these incredible geopolitical forces collide. Thank you so much for joining me on this geographic tour, and I'll see you on the next explainer.